some of you probably saw the Toni Morrison article in The Nation today where basically she says, we're writers and artists and that's what we have to keep doing. So that gave me some solace. But I have to say, I wish I had written some fabulously political book, but yeah, what can I say? So this book has actually 39 stories in it, and some of the stories are very short, like one-paragraph stories, and I don't like to call them flash fiction for, I don't know, my own stupid reasons, but I don't like to call them flash fiction. So they're paragraphs. So I have some paragraphs, and then I have some longer stories, and then I have some medium stories. So I'm just going to read a little 6-minute story here. And I took seriously the theme of tonight, Out of Time. And I don't know, this only, I don't know, sort of suggests the theme, Out of Time. But to me, it had to do with Out of Time because it's about a sort of thinking about the past from the perspective of a future, I guess you could say. Anyway, it's called The First. And the title is actually part of the first sentence. So, The First. And I think only farm I ever visited was somewhere in Virginia. My sister and I went with our nurse, who was not a medical nurse since we were not sick, but a governess, though we didn't use that term in those days in America. She, Nursey, was a thin woman on the gaunt side even, with salt and pepper hair that gave off a steel-like glint. One noticed her hair particularly, since it thudded to her waist and was perennially gripped by a rubber band. Imagine thick, dark eyebrows, a faint mustache, and knobby red hands, and you've got the picture. The farmhouse was an enormous plantation-style home, all white with a wraparound front porch, replete with wicker rocking chairs and cats. The people who lived there had been former employers of Nursey, and they called her Miss Del Gershio. There was a mother and a father, the former tall and blonde with a brusque, stately manner, and the latter an almost invisible presence among us, so absorbed was he in the daily newspaper and his cigar, except for the occasions on which he emitted a disgusting series of hacking coughs. These were the days before obsessive TV watching, and I remember playing a game on the living room rug. I think the game must have been Clue, because there was a silver-colored candlestick and a tiny bottle of poison with an X on it. I remember initially losing to my sister and the boy of the house, which humiliated me. My sister, younger, prettier, unafraid of dogs. The boy of the house, dog lover, sandy-haired, freckled. I had fallen in love with him almost immediately, but it was my sister he favored. His dog also favored my sister. At one point, decided to bite me. I remember the pattern on the rug, big, faded pink flowers and a green vine threaded clumsily among the stems. I remember the dinner table with its heavy silver cutlery and the bedroom with its twin canopy beds. Those beds belonged to Mrs. and her sister, Nursey told us, and it was a special honor to sleep in them. This was the first time I'd been bitten by a dog. So since then, it has happened a multitude of times, countless times, and I have made peace with the fact that when dogs spot me, their mouths begin to water and they become enraged. The cow that required milking was brown and white, like a cow from a storybook. I had such a book in my own home, in my own room, wherever that was. That farm cow was called Deb, and her udders dragged almost to the floor of the barn, which was covered in tan hay. I stood outside the wooden door, one of those half doors, with the top half open to reveal Deb and her milkers. First the boy, Joe, then my sister, who boldly reached under the cow body and grabbed a fierce hold of one appendage after an utter ha-ha. She, my sister, was wearing plaid Bermuda shorts and a white cotton blouse. At that moment, if asked to picture my home, wherever it was, I would picture a child's drawing of a tiny house on a vast, dark background, because that gives you the feel of it. My real home was nothing like that, but my idea of home at the time was primitive and unformed, as if my mind could not quite reconcile the desolate notion of home along with its actual imprint on memory. The notion of home for me had always been difficult and lonely, whereas my real home had been complex and bountiful, with no smoke rising from the single chimney and no dark, empty windows. After the cow was milked, we were each given a tin cup of warm milk, which I did not care for. My sister's eyes were bright. The boy, Joe, looked down at her fondly. The dog, who would eventually bite me, was nuzzling her leg. Outside, the sun was like a child's drawing of a sun, with rays shooting out in a circle. There was a fence and a field of cattle who were routinely slaughtered for the evening meal. Steak, every night steak, blood red and sizzling, then cold with the fat congealing in a thin film across the top. We were all given steak knives, very sharp with little teeth. Nursey cut our steak for us, tiny pieces, as those you would feed to a kitten. I felt as though I were eating my kitten. The kitten I did not own and did not long for. We had been playing Clue. I was conscious of my long, hideous face, my flat, dark hair, of the way my pajamas bunched up when I sat, and the absurd, unfortunate design on those pajamas, which was of chickens and eggs. What could be more embarrassing? Miss Scarlett in the library with the gun, I guessed, and I was right. Joe shrugged unhappily, but my sister, never a good sport, overturned the board, spraying the players and the cards and the weapons across the patterned rug. That is when the dog bit my arm right through the pajama sleeve. After that, I was even less popular than before. The boy and my sister went off, and even Nursey seemed to distance herself from me. I felt my life to be on a downward slide. I sat beneath the white canopy of my designated bed, feeling sorry for myself, tugging anxiously at the Band-Aid that covered the tooth marks of the dog and soaked up the blood it had drawn. In the closet, I found a box full of dried corn on the cobs marked Halloween, and a box of photographs marked vacations. I took 2 corns and a photo of a man pushing a wheelbarrow and a photo of a woman in an apron wearing glasses that made her look blind. I put these things in the zipper compartment of my suitcase, along with a white bottle and a box of silver thumbtacks. By now, everything has undone itself. It has been revised and reconfigured in that silly vat we call memory, in that ridiculous thimble we call history. It has been repressed, then unearthed, then made to look more tragic, then made to appear happier, all yellow, as if it had never occurred except in morbid, self-pitying imagination. The boy, the dog, my sister, the nurse, all figures in a display I affixed to the bulletin board in my study to remind me of my vanishing. I have already lived many lives, but this was one of the first.